Hello, my name is Debbie Boone, and I want to welcome you to my podcast, The Bend, where we explore how successful people navigated the path and emerged in a better place when life threw them an unexpected twist. It's inspired by one of my favorite sayings: the bend in the road is not the end of the road unless you fail to make the curve. These conversations will hopefully help you and inspire you to embrace your personal bend and to flourish. I hope you enjoy it, and if you need help with your own personal navigation and you're in veterinary medicine, please feel free to reach out to me at Debbie Boone to Manage Vets Consulting. Enjoy the bend and be inspired by our wonderful guest. Welcome. All right, well, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, wherever you're listening to this. My name is Debbie Boone, and I am the host of the Bend podcast. We talk on our podcast with change makers in veterinary medicine, people who are bending the profession for the better. And my guest today certainly qualifies as this. Aaron Shaw, whose wife is a veterinarian, this is how he got into this craziness that we call a profession, works to help create burnout resistant clinics. He is the founder of Project VetSpan, the creator of the Durable Vet Blueprint. He has so much background. I'm going to have to let him tell you all this, but 3 decades of experience in coaching, ergonomics, resilience training. And the cool thing about this is I've been talking about this for a while, about the fact that I think that our physical conditioning often leads us to have mental health issues because we're in pain all the time. And if we would learn how to protect our bodies in a very physically intense profession, that I think we would have a more sustainable and fulfilling profession because we would not be so miserable every day when we get on the floor. So Aaron, thank you very much for joining us today and for taking the lead on just physical health in veterinary medicine. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Debbie. I'm excited to be here on the Bend and to share what I've been passionate about for, yes, hard to say 3 decades because that sounds like an awfully long time, but that's how long I've been an occupational therapist. So my background is I'm an occupational therapist and a strength and conditioning specialist and a certified hand therapist. So I've been in the space of the humans that are, again, I'm not a veterinarian, so I don't know anything about fleas or ticks or TPLOs or anything else, but taking care of humans and really helping people reach their potential. And I think that there are a lot of barriers to that for all of us, aging and our body changes and the impact of what we do physically and emotionally and how we, fuel ourselves with food, how well we move around. And if there's ever a challenging environment that challenges all the above, it is veterinary medicine.
100%, 100%. It's I know that human medicine is challenging when you're talking about patient care, but for the most part, they have addressed it with devices and hoists and lifts. And I remember my mom had her back damaged with a fall, and they weighed her and they put her in this sling and lifted her. It's one of the funniest pictures I've ever seen. And she's like, "Don't take my picture." But human health care has that. What do? We grab a 50-pound dog or a 70-pound dog and heave it onto a scale or a lift table and just kind of say, "I got this." Well, we've got it, but if you got it 25 times a day, you don't got it after a while. So I feel like there's a couple of aspects of veterinary medicine that we could be addressing. First of all, the ergonomics of our equipment. That's one thing. I mean, lift
Yes.
tables certainly are more expensive than a flat exam table, but my word, save your bag when you can.
For sure. Yeah. Save your body. One thing that I really focus on with, this Project VetSpan concept is really the definition of VetSpan. So it's really like the duration of time that vet professionals can maintain physical and emotional durability while thriving in vet med. And I think that the key here is, it's both the durability aspect, but it's thriving. And I talk to a lot of vets and a lot of techs, and as you said, I'm married to a veterinarian. And so there's the language that people use is really, I mean, whatever is the opposite of thriving. I mean, it sounds like it's just like a test of survival, like, oh, like made it through another day or another week. And, you can insert my back hurts, my neck hurts, I'm sore. I've been, my knees are sore from being, kneeling on the concrete floor. I mean, every vet clinic has to have a concrete floor, and every
Of course.
every every vet professional has to have calluses on their knees and war wounds. And it's just from the outside, I guess I have the luxury of looking outside in. Again, I'm married to
Yes.
a vet, so I'm very close to it. But from somebody who, spent a career doing rehabilitation and performance training and ergonomics training, like it is crazy. It is
Yeah.
just a baffling, uh, demanding. Call it a sport. I talk a lot about the concept of a veterinary athlete because I think, when I talk at conferences, I'll ask people like, raise your hand if you think vet med is a physical job, and everybody's like, oh my, oh,
Yeah.
super physical. And how many people have had aches and pains from practicing? Oh, everybody. It's been, sore, beat up, physically demanding. And then I'll ask, how many of you have had specific training on how to train your body for the physical demands of the work? Nobody.
Nobody.
How about ergonomic training? Well, I was trained by another tech that was here for a while. She just told me to like bend my knees and, to take Advil and have a glass of wine when I get home. Like, wait a minute. We can do better than this. Like this,
Yeah.
and I say, vet medicine is a sport, but more is like the analogy of like, we know that it's physically demanding work and we know it's emotionally demanding. We know there's like, you have to have your head focused. The emotional stresses, which is, I think an analogy to sports where you kind of got to have all these components ready to go for game day, if you will. But the difference is that athletes, they spend time outside of game day preparing their body,
Yeah.
preparing their mind, studying the sport, studying their, opponents, if you will. And most sports have the luxury of like having multiple days off or like, they just play games on Sundays or whatnot. In vet med, it's like every single day is a Super Bowl. Nobody's preparing their body for it. Nobody's preparing their mind for it. And it's just like, putting on a helmet and saying like, "Oh, it's Thursday. Hopefully, I can get through to the end of the week."
Yeah.
And so the need, I think, for a different approach is it's due. It's time.
Yeah. I agree with you 100%. I mean, just as an observer and somebody who's worked in hospitals or did work in hospitals for 23 years, sometimes the configuration of things like the front desk or, how we set up the treatment room. And I've often thought we put the heaviest stuff we have over our heads. All the ringers are in the saline solution is all up here in the unused bank of cat cages that we have at the top shelf.
Hmm.
And why don't we put them on the floor where we can just pick up a bag and not have to lift that over our heads? I don't know why we do the things we do. But we don't strategically plan for supporting our body and the physicality of the work in the way we set up our treatment rooms, our
100%.
wards, the front desk. I mean, how many front desks do I go into that are, desktop height, like a student at school? Well, a student at school is going to sit there for an hour and be taught by a teacher. A CSR is going to jump up and down at least 15 to 20 times an hour to
Hmm.
go and help a client or hand somebody something or go get a message or, all the things that they do. And how bad is that on your back and knees to do that? So why don't we set our desk height up 12 inches higher and put us on lab stools where we can just like pop on and off easily without killing our knees? But we don't do that. And architects don't design for it, right?
No.
And that is what drives me insane.
Yeah. Likewise. And I think
Yeah.
that again, the luxury of coming in with a clean point of view of things, like
Uh,
and I've worked in hospitals. I own my own human physical physical therapy
uh,
practice, and and I think that we get so accustomed to you start a new job, go into the work environment, and there's a sense of this is just the way it is. That's where the saline is. That's the chair that's over there. That's the desktop, and it's almost implied like it's my job to kind of fit in
right.
somewhere. And you don't want to be the new person that's like, oh, hey, by the way, that desk chair is screwed up, and you can't be that person.
Yeah.
But then that's okay for a day or two or a week or two, and then that table that's in the way of the hand washing station that's been there because somebody just left it there 6 months ago, that's now the new home. And I can sit there and I can, I'll observe and I practice for 20 minutes, like every minute somebody is reaching over in this kind of semi-awkward position to reach the hand soap or to
Uh,
get the thing that they have to get repeatedly through the day. And it never, in that moment, they probably don't feel pain when they're doing it. They're just like,
right.
oh, they just kind of go through it. And I'm looking at it like, why don't you just move that down one shelf? Because that would make things easier for everybody. Or move that table off to the side for six
Yeah.
inches. But it's just, we just kind of go, and things are like everybody's in a rush. Everybody like kind
Yeah.
of pushing
Yeah.
through. And so I think sometimes the benefit of having the external
Mm.
eyes come
Yeah.
in and say, hey, here's an idea. What if we move this a little bit and recognize that there's there's no such thing as perfect. And so I teach ergonomics in exercise and nutrition and whatnot. But when I talk about ergonomics, like I think that it's a little bit of a disappointment because people want, what is the perfect way to set this thing up?
Uh-huh.
It's like there is no such thing because you're on the floor, you're standing up, you're over here, you're at different rooms, and you are of a certain height. Your arms are only so long,
Yes.
and the person that you're with, they may be 3 inches taller, 3 inches
Uh,
shorter. They may have more mobility or less mobility, and so
uh,
there's no like perfect thing. But I think that there is certainly some low hanging fruit that you can kind
right.
of go in and say like, this isn't going to be perfect all the time. But if your goal is to have a long career, how can we maybe shave off some of the unnecessary extra wear and tear? And that'll at least help. That'll help you thrive. And then I think the second component of that is, as you kind of talked about initially, is you have to have a physical capacity. You are in a physical job, and you can't ergonomic your way out of it. You can't
Hmm.
have like, oh, I'm just going to buy a really expensive chair. And I've been to a lot of clinics that tried to solve this problem with like, I'm going to buy the expensive table, the expensive chair, have the really big monitors. It's like, yeah, but you're still on and off the floor 40 times a day. Like
Yeah.
you have to have, a physical ability to do that. And then I think have a culture and have a team and leadership to say, hey, how can we help our entire team be physically durable, be emotionally durable?
Mhm.
Because we've fixed some of the things we can, we kind of ergonomics our ways as much as we can. But again, the equivalent maybe thinking about the NFL, it's like, yeah, have the helmets, have the shoulder pads, have some exercises, to be durable. But to be clear, you're still going to get hit. It's
Yeah.
part of the job.
Yeah. And
And
you still
so,
got to be physically able to do that.
yeah, and you have
Yeah.
to be able to recover from that. And I think that
Hmm.
some of these things are, and from again my external point of view is there are some solutions that are kind of hidden in plain sight, but it's different and
Hmm.
change anywhere is hard. And I think right now in vet med, it seems like people are kind of drinking from a fire hose because
Yeah.
there's been a lot of industry changes, and so it's a challenge to kind of break through some of
Yeah.
that
Yeah. And some of these things, cost more than the cheap version.
for sure.
And so there's the financial constraints of it. But I remember having a conversation with Dr. Ernie Ward one time, and he said somebody asked him in an interview what the longevity of his practice life was. And he said, a stool. And, and he said, you're on and off the floor 500 times a day, but having a little low stool that you work the animals, and I went, yeah, why won't you have a stool? That
Yeah,
mechanics do it to change tires.
for sure.
Why won't you do that? But it's just that kind of stuff that we don't take the time to simplify and break down the motions that we have every single day and all day
And
long.
change is
And
tough.
yeah, it
Change is
is.
tough. It,
It is.
it's it's like this is the way we do it, and this is the way it's always been done.
Hmm.
And so I think that, I mean, the most successful practices that I engage with are the ones that are open to having conversations. Like,
Yeah.
we're going to put this out on the table. It's not going to be, kind of like the gossiping in the back room, like, oh, this room stinks and I hate being
No.
in that treatment room or that situation. It's more
Yeah.
like, hey, if I'm a leader, I want to have the best team possible. I want us all to thrive. I want this to be a place that we all enjoy being, and we can do our best work. But it's not fair to think any one person has all the solutions. So I think if from the kind of the top down approach,
Mhm.
if somebody can kind of just have the conversation and say, hey, we have some strengths, we have some weaknesses. Let's lay it all out on the table. Let's talk about, how does your body feel? Do you feel sore? Do you feel tired? Do you have, energy that changes? Like, you have that 10 o'clock crash,
Mhm.
energy crash. Because could that be kind of what our nutrition is like? Are you recovering as the week goes on? Like, to have these conversations, just put it out there.
Yeah.
you're at least setting the team up for success. You're
Yeah.
setting them up to achieve their potential
Hmm.
and to not have those conversations. I think you're just sort of like rolling the dice. And
Yeah.
of course, there's some people who are, you know, always doing that anyhow and will
Yeah.
do this on their own.
Yeah.
And there are some people who probably would, but they don't know kind of what to do.
Right.
And it's like, man, help that person,
Yeah.
give them a structure to succeed. That would
Yeah.
be really great,
I think we spend a lot of time studying in our continuing education all kinds of medicine. I mean, we're just obsessed with the medicine. But there's so much other that we should be learning. And I think learning how to take care of ourselves, learning about nutrition, learning about personal finance, all these kind of things are valuable to us. And when I was managing hospitals, my brother was a certified financial planner, and I had him come in and give a talk to my team. I've had people who, were experts at first aid, and they came in to give a talk to my team, and people appreciate the fact that you're not just trying to grow them medically, but you're trying to improve their lives in general. And that's
100%.
part of your job as the leader of your hospital, is to take care of your team in all the ways that they need to be taken care of. My sales reps did not care for me when I said, you cannot bring junk food into my hospital. We do not want donuts. We do not want pizza. You can go to Panera and you can bring us salad. You can bring us fruit. You can bring us stuff like that. And of course, that takes a whole lot more effort than having a pizza delivered by Domino's. But I said, we don't want to eat that stuff here. And
Hmm.
so it made you um, have a better day. I mean, you didn't get that sugar rush and the sugar crash and all this. And now that didn't stop the clients from bringing it and us eating it
Sure,
because
sure.
they
Yeah,
would. But you can have strategy about your staff meetings and what you're going to provide for your team and what you ask outsiders to provide for your team. And it can be healthier
yeah. Be
than what,
thoughtful.
uh, hey, that's right. So I love this conversation. I just feel like it's so valuable. And by no means am I in great physical condition. I spend way too much time sitting here, but I do
We all
every
do.
2 hours I'm up and walking my dog at least, around the block and back. And we just took about a half a mile walk. So there's opportunity for us. And we say, oh, we get plenty of exercise, but that's not good exercise. That up and down and that getting animals out of the cage and the start and stop, it's not doing our body good the way it needs to be done. My mom is 92 and has been a gym rat her whole life. And she always says movement is lubricant, but she would go to the Y and do water aerobics as she got too old to
Mhm.
do anything else. But just looking at her, and we were in the restaurant business, and that again is stand on your feet all day long, serving, carrying heavy trays, and that's kind of how I grew up. But there's you have to be physically fit in order to do that work. And I think
Yeah,
the parallel is incredible that brings us into vet med.
yeah. And I think that the risk is for so many people. I think that the most challenging thing they do physically is the job.
Yeah.
And so the again, I kind of use like a sports analogy is like you could think if you're on a sports team, you want to make practice harder than the games.
Hmm.
So when you show up for game time, it's within your capacity because you've trained harder on your when you can control
Yeah.
all the variables.
Yeah.
And I think for so many people, like that 50-pound dog that they need to pick up and move around, that is the heaviest thing they will ever lift. And it's done not planned, just how like, oh, but here's the new patient showed up. You're like,
Yeah.
oh boy, okay, I have to move this from point A to point B, and it's really challenging. I haven't trained for that. So it's kind of a roll of the dice. Like,
Hmm.
can I do this? Like, and probably haven't been trained in body mechanics,
Yeah.
probably in a little bit of a rush, probably maybe didn't fuel themselves well. So they have a great energy. If they happen to be catching them when they're on like that downward swope from this,
Hmm.
that energy crash from the Starbucks in the croissant or whatever. So it's like this perfect storm. And yeah, no wonder why burnout is huge, injuries are huge,
Hmm.
people are feeling beat up, broken, battered and bruised. Yeah, because there hasn't really been enough preparation for that situation. So what I encourage people to do, and this is what I do with my coaching and consulting, is let's set up systems where when you are in that situation, because it's going to happen, maybe not today or tomorrow, but that 50-pound dog will be there or more. Uh, um, and so you're going to have to handle that. But what if you had been taking the time to prepare for that as part of your overall personal health journey? Because if you want to perform the best you can at work and you want to thrive in this career and you really enjoy this career, and if you don't like feeling beat up and if you don't like feeling, exhausted or stressed out because like, oh, I don't know if I can do this, that there's obviously a very well documented correlation between physical pain and job satisfaction.
Hmm.
So if you're in physical pain or you're stressed about that, your job satisfaction is going to be down.
Hmm.
So you have all of these variables that are negative that can really be not completely resolved necessarily, but certainly diminished dramatically by having some preparation for your physical ability, for your mobility, for your stamina, for your strength, for your nutrition, for how well you sleep. And these things are well within our control. And I'm not talking about, living on salads and rice cakes and, meditating during lunch or anything, but there are some fundamental things that, 15 minutes a couple days a week can go a long way to save your back and give you more job satisfaction.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's there for the taking, and it has to go beyond, respectfully, it has to go beyond the conversations on wellness.
Right.
And I think that I mean, I like the concept of wellness. I think it's at this point, like so many things, I feel like that word has probably lived its life cycle, like life
I
cycle
agree with you. It
at this
has
point.
been worn out.
Yeah. And so I think that there's some terms that I think wellness is kind of a soft term. Like it's a comfortable, maybe a comfortable term in compassion and, belonging and well-being. And these things are certainly good. And I am 100% supportive of those things. But I like using the term durability,
Yeah.
because I think it's more than just, passively being able to tolerate
Right.
stuff. I think more like in vet med when I watch when I watch people in practice, I'm like, you like wellness is not going to get you through this situation. Like you
No.
need to be tough. You have to
Yeah.
reach, you have to squat, you have to maintain like these bizarre, awkward, contortionist positions for long periods of time with an animal that's unpredictable. Like you can't wellness your way through that. Like you
Yeah.
have to be physically and emotionally tough. And in order to be tough, you have to train to be tough. And so I think that maybe the wellness models to date in vet med have been okay as like, maybe maintaining some sense of equilibrium. But I see the potential of like, what if you were better yet, had even more resilience,
Yeah.
more strength, and then whatever you have to do in work is below your threshold. That
Yeah.
gets so much easier, so much more sustainable,
Yeah. 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 I just think this is just it's the piece of the puzzle that's missing. We talk a lot about mental health, but we cannot separate our body from our mind. And
No,
we are talking about that and trying to do that. And so you cannot say, well, I come home every day and I'm so exhausted that all I want to do is drink a glass of wine and veg out on Netflix. Well, if that's what you do, then that's all you're capable of doing pretty
exactly.
soon because you have just diminished yourself
You're like,
into a puddle on the couch, and that's not getting you anywhere.
no.
So, you know, I was reading the other day and listening to a podcast, and I'm very much interested in like what goes in your body and how it manifests in your
Hmm.
life and not eating junk food just because it's fast, not just having a plan of what you're going to eat. And I'm not a meal prep person, but I don't buy crap. and and if you don't buy it, you can't eat it.
Right.
And that's my simple philosophy of don't eat the stuff because and yes, is it good? Yes. Did I just get back from the beach with 5 or 10 of my girlfriends and did we eat a bunch of stuff we shouldn't have eaten? Yes. Was I miserable all day yesterday? Yes, because of what I ate. And so I got back on the bandwagon and it was, whole wheat toast and multigrain bread and boiled eggs. And this nonsense has got to stop. But sometimes we never get over that, right? We just keep eating and going to that. And is it a comfort? Yeah, it is, but it's not really helping you
It's
mentally or
temporary.
physically. Yeah,
It's a temporary fix, and I think
yeah.
we're all hardwired. I mean, not that long ago we were kind of cavemen. We were pretty
Yeah.
primitive beings, and yet our our access to calories has far
Oh,
outpaced our primitive
unbelievable.
desires. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I love salt. I love sugar. And once upon a time, like you would take whatever you could get because that may mean life or death.
Yeah.
And now it's too much, you know.
It's
It's like
it's everywhere.
it's
And
every
advertisers that are bombarding you
oh
with
yeah, like they're
displays
hitting
and
us in
your
our weak spot.
yeah, and
Like
especially those advertisements that come on about what 9:30, 10
right,
o'clock at night
right, yeah. Like
that are
yes, I
Taco
do want some
Bell
ice
or
cream.
or
Yes.
Dairy Queen and all these things. Like,
Yes.
oh, that looks good. Let me go get
Of
some ice
course it
cream.
does. But I
Yeah.
think that, to correlate this to like the mental and emotional side of it, I think that which I think is perhaps rightfully so, like kind of hits the headlines a lot. I think that there's obviously some the emotional stress and strain of the job is very, very real. And so I do a lot of talks on stress management and so on, but I want to be clear that physical exercise is a great way to manage cortisol, to manage stress hormones.
Yes.
And so to say, I'm stressed out, I'm burnt out, I'm overwhelmed, and to not exercise and to not prioritize sleep and to not be thoughtful of how you're fueling yourself with food, you're just choosing not to address that
Hmm.
because these things, don't require a prescription from your physician to
Yeah.
do some basic exercise. And I mean, there's even been research that shows there was a study that showed people who were diagnosed with severe clinical depression had a decrease in symptoms through exercise alone. So it didn't cure their depression, but it had a measurable impact
Yeah.
just through exercise. And that was
Yeah.
for people with severe depression. So if you
Yeah.
hopefully don't have severe
Right.
diagnosed depression, a little exercise goes a long way. And the same thing with sleep. Sleep is when we recover. So it's one of these pillars that I talk about that in order for you to bring your A game to work tomorrow, you want to be well rested.
Hmm.
And if you're not well rested, we all know what this like to be jet lagged or just to not sleep well and you're kind of foggy in the head. It's not fair to think if you're, you know, compromising your sleep that you're going to be resilient to the stress, resilient to that client that comes in that's like, kind of coming in hot.
Yeah.
You're not going to be at your best for that. So it's going to weigh on you even more and you're going to feel even more stressed and more
Hmm.
depressed and anxious. Yet you have tools at home that you could kind of fine tune your sleeping environment, perhaps. And the same thing with nutrition. We talked about fueling.
Hmm.
It's like, if you're coming down off that sugar buzz, and we've all done it, and we all do it. It's not fair to think you're going to be at your best. And so you may be able to tough it out in the moment. You may be able to compromise, and push through some sleep that wasn't great, and push through some ergonomics that aren't great, and push through like, well, I don't really train my body very well in that moment. But you're probably not doing your best work
Hmm.
possible. So you're not, which is kind of just sad. You're not
Hmm.
living up to your potential. And two, you're certainly not setting yourself up for a long career. You're
Hmm.
more likely to be setting yourself up for being a statistic of, you know, 4 to 6 years, and you're
Yeah.
just beat up and you're out. I can't do it. Not for me. It's
Yeah.
like it's such, and that's what I think is. Sorry to be on my soapbox here, but to me, like that's like what a missed opportunity. Like
Yeah.
what a missed opportunity. And I really, I started Project Vetsman because I really get tired of really great people in vet med just getting injured, burnt out, beat up, and just leaving the profession that they care about.
Yeah.
Like that is just tragic. That's
It,
just
it,
silly.
it, it
You know?
really is this, if you think about, and I'm sure, I don't know if your wife was one of these or not, but I've talked to a lot of veterinarians, and in between 5 and 13 years of age, they decide that they want to be a
Oh
veterinarian
yeah.
or work in the profession. And I was one of those. I was the kid who was always going to be in vet med. And you think, oh, you spent all these years and all this time, and you really want to do this profession, and you love, helping animals and they're humans. And then you don't protect yourself from the physical aspects of the job, and eventually you wear yourself out so that you can't do it anymore, or you learn to hate it,
Yeah.
which is even worse, is that you
Yeah.
learn to hate it and resent it and become one of those old toxic people that you always dreaded working with when you first started and were
Hmm.
new and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
Hmm.
But I think that has a lot to do with is like how much pain are people in, and how much are they suffering just to get the work done? And the other thing that I think that is, I don't know if this is unique, and maybe you've seen this in human medicine, is that it seems to be there's a badge of honor that says, I can do this by myself. I can lift this by myself. I don't need help with this, dog that's trying to jump out of my arms. I got this.
Of course.
And why we think we can't go get the other end of this dog, right? It's trying to knock me all around. How about grabbing the other end of this dog? Because divide and conquer, and we don't do it. And
Mm.
I had a rule in my practice that you couldn't lift anything by yourself that weighed over 35 pounds. Well,
Right.
okay. I mean, some, relatively small dogs weigh 35 pounds, but why would you? All you have to do is put an arm underneath the
Yep.
belly and help lift them up. And people work there for a very long time, and we didn't have
Mhm.
a lot of health problems. And then we had a walking trail behind our clinic. So at lunch breaks, I schedule the lunch breaks, and those of us who so inclined, we take a walk. I am a firm believer in going outside. I think
100%.
that you mentioned earlier that humans, we're not that far from the forest,
Hmm. Hmm.
and that soothes us. There's so many studies that show just being out in nature, getting, out into greenery, breathing some
Sunshine.
fresh air, some sunshine does us mentally so much
100%.
good
Yeah.
that we just need to get outside. So I'm an avid gardener. I have way too many plants, but it keeps me outside. So I'll finish my work day and the first thing I do is get lost in the garden for at least an hour and a half. My husband goes, "I know where you are. You're always in those gardens." But what a great stress reliever. The plants just I watch them grow and get excited when I have a strawberry and the dog is excited because he gets it. And so we
It's a win-win.
it is a win for everybody, but I
Yeah.
feel like we spend way too much time looking at our phones and staying in the house and eh, navel gazing. God
Oh, for
help it.
sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's hard. I mean, again, it kind of goes in like the idea of like the late night commercials that know where to hit you because you want to, of course I want a Dairy Queen. And
yeah,
also, I mean, our phones are obviously designed to, every single app on it is designed to like pull you in because, minutes is money. The more
yeah.
eyeballs that you get is money. Um, but I think, to kind of go back to your point about the long walks and working in your garden, I think things that kind of come to mind with that is one, you have a hobby and a purpose outside of your work.
Mhm.
And I think that it's real easy for anybody, but I'll say specifically vet professionals that are kind of getting beat down. It's basically like suffer and then try to recover and do it again the next day and do it again the next day. And so the sense of identity can become only that. And again, it goes to the badge of honor. It's like, well, I'm just going to push through and I'll do it the extra work. And it's like flogging yourself for
Yeah. Some
for
martyrdom to
yeah,
it.
exactly. And
Yeah.
it's silly and it's not necessary and it's self-defeating. And I mean the idea of going for a walk and kind of doing something different. I'm a big fan of micro habits and taking, small little changes. And so certainly if somebody's curious enough and they want to start a garden, by all means do that. And getting outside for a breath of fresh air. Yeah, you don't need to go hike a mountaintop,
Right.
but you can walk outside the door, walk through the parking lot of your clinic, and do one lap around the building and come
Yeah.
back in. It is something. It is something, and it changes your physiology. And you don't need a gym membership. You don't need to feel weird lifting weights. If that's not like, it is something. And so the biggest changes happen with tiny little, kind of like imperceivable
Hmm.
things. And
Hmm.
I think if when I talk to groups and say, is it reasonable to think that you could walk outside for 5 minutes at some point during the day?
Yeah.
So for as much as it's like, oh, I can't, it's nothing like you wouldn't understand. It's so busy. When I really ask them, like, yeah, I could probably do that for 5 minutes. Great.
Yeah.
That's it. Don't try to walk for 10. Don't walk for 20. Don't, don't get a map of the city and try to cover the whole thing. Just, just walk for 5 minutes and do that a couple of days a week and do that for a couple of weeks. And then you'll realize, hey, I'm actually looking forward to this now. I
Yeah.
do actually feel a little bit better. And it's just a tiny little thing. And of course, you can go crazy and there's a million other things you can do, but start with that little micro habit.
Hmm.
Start with a micro habit of, nutrition. Think about if you are, and again, I've been in a lot of clinics that, cookies and donuts and sweets happen to be kind of readily
Yeah.
available. and I'm not an anti, I mean, I like a good treat myself, but I think it's balance and being thoughtful of like, I don't want to look back and regret, you know, that guy, me making a bad decision later when I'm like
Uh,
tired and like I'm like, shoot, I shouldn't have had the whole donut. Maybe have half of the donut and then maybe have maybe have a spoonful of cottage cheese or something or a hard boiled egg
mhm,
to kind of balance out that sugar buzz that's a quick rise and a quick
mhm,
crash and the mood that goes along with it. But maybe if you balance that out with something that was more complex carbohydrates, more protein that will still give you fuel, but will help keep you level and keep you sharp. Especially if
mhm.
I mean, if you're making clinical decisions, at least if you're making clinical decisions with my dog,
Yeah,
you better not be coming down off a sugar crash. You
that's
better not
right.
be grumpy. It's like,
Yeah, we don't want
I
brain fog
no,
involved
I
in our
want your
diagnosis.
best. I want
Yeah,
your best if you're taking care of
yeah.
my dog. So please, you know, go for a walk at lunch for 5 minutes.
Hmm.
Have something that's, a little bit more balanced and maybe a little bit more nutritious for your snack.
Hmm.
Maybe focus on your sleep a little bit more, get a little, maybe not even longer sleep, but better quality, deeper
Hmm.
sleep. Get your face away from the phone before you go to bed for an
Yeah,
hour, if you can imagine such a thing.
yeah.
But
Don't
then
put your phone
you're
by your
setting,
bedside table, right? Put your
no,
my phone charges in another room.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, those things alone, none of those things are super dramatic. I'm not
Hmm.
saying like go eat like a vegan or something like that.
Yeah.
It's not like super profound for so many people.
Uh,
And so and because some of these aren't profound, I feel like sometimes people kind of poo-poo them like, oh, that's
yeah.
not, I know I should go to the gym an hour a day, 5 days a week. I'm like, nobody
No,
does that.
no,
You
no,
don't need to do that. No, but
no.
doing a little something, I promise you, it makes an impact. It impacts your career. It impacts
Mhm,
your vet span. Again, we're talking like the duration that you have physical and emotional durability to
mhm.
thrive. And it impacts through tiny little changes.
Yes.
Learning body mechanics, having a buddy system at work. And, if you're a leadership, if you're in a leadership position, having open communication with your team, being like,
Mhm.
hey, can we make this any easier? Like everybody's reaching around this thing or this desk is kind of
Yeah,
bugging me. Like, does it bug you too? Like putting that stuff on the table can go so far.
yeah.
And yet sometimes I feel like that first step is like the biggest bridge to,
Right.
to
Yeah.
cross.
Yeah. Debbie Boone here. I want to take a quick break and thank you for listening to The Bend. As many of you know, I am a trainer, speaker, writer, and consultant working to make life better for the folks in the veterinary profession. If you're a practice owner or manager, you've felt it. Team burnout, difficult client conversations, and the constant pressure to do more with less. That's why I wrote Hospitality in Healthcare, the culmination of my 40 years of peopling in vet med. It gives you a clear, practical way to elevate the client experience while making work feel better for your team, not harder. If you're ready to lead a practice that feels as good as it performs, you can find the book wherever books are sold. Now, let's get back to my guest on The Bend. It's funny that you're talking about that because one of my clients' practice was flooded during Hurricane Helene up in the mountains of North Carolina. And of course, it was traumatic. There was a foot and a half of water in it. And when they went in to get the mud out of it, and I said, but look, this was an older practice that she had purchased. And there were a lot of things that had just been stuck there, right? When you walk in, you just, here's an empty counter space, let's stick it here. I said, you have an opportunity now to get all your team together and go, let's talk about our workflow. Let's talk
Hmm.
about where we reach for things every day. Do we need to have it to walk across the room to grab a 3cc syringe? Why don't we put it here where we work every single minute of the day? And so they got the opportunity to take all their equipment and redesign how they worked with the way they knew that they worked. But all of the team got involved and say, no, when I do this, here's where I reach for things. And just those little things, not only will they help their body, but if you think about 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds
Over and
longer,
over and over.
over and over and over again, the time saved is dramatic in the
Mhm.
day. One of the things you were talking about, stepping outside and walking around for 5 minutes. Well, when I grew up in practice back in the 80s, a lot of people smoke. Very few people smoke these
Mhm.
days. And I'm stunned that anybody does because sorry, folks, it is stupid. You should not do
Dumb.
it. Um, but they took a break, right? Because their nicotine addiction was making them have to go stay outside. And so no matter what was happening at certain periods of time, they went on a smoke break. And I thought, we're missing that
Mhm.
because we had people who were kind of regimented into that. And then other people would go with them because they were on break. Well, then they took their break. I'll take my break. Even if I didn't smoke, I'd go stand out
Mhm.
there and talk to them. So everybody just got out the door a little bit for a few minutes and then came back in. And it was a mental,
Yeah,
because we had an opportunity to decompress over what was going on. And I feel like I certainly don't encourage anybody to smoke, but I do encourage them to take a break, and that it is not inappropriate to take a break. It is probably gives you, and you don't have to go hide in the bathroom and scroll on your phone. That is not a
that's not
break.
a break. No,
No. Um, just, leave your phone. I love the clinics and everybody's, oh, this is a horrible thing to do. They make them put their phones in their lockers. They have a basket where everybody's phone goes. And I went, they're really doing you a favor
for
because
sure.
we are trained by Verizon, et cetera, like Pavlov's dogs. And every time
Hmm.
that ding goes off, we think we've got to look at the notification. I have no notifications on my phone, not a single one. And when I found that out, I thought, you know what? You will not train me. This is a tool, and
Right,
I am not going to be controlled by a tool. I control the tool.
right.
But we are naive to the ways of mental uh, manipulation.
Control.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so we don't understand that turning those notifications off is actually very good for us mentally.
For sure.
As somebody who grew up in the old school days where people called you on the phone and that was your only means of
Got a
communication.
dime for the
Yeah,
payphone to
exactly,
go
for
for a
the
ride.
payphone.
For sure.
Then we had, you weren't always on, and people found you
And life
amazingly.
went on. Yeah, we
Yeah,
still survived, and here we are.
yeah,
And yeah, I
that's
didn't
right.
miss out on anything.
People go, but it's such a dangerous world. I went, no, statistically, it's not.
No,
If you look at the reports from FBI and across the world, we are living in the safest time in history. We don't have Attila the Hun coming, putting, our heads on spikes.
yeah,
You can walk down the street without being murdered. And it's the fact that the incidents that do happen because of
they get
social
showed.
media, we know about them.
Yeah,
And so that's not good for our mental health either. Dwelling on negativity, living in a news cycle, that's all nonsense. It's all
yeah,
nonsense. And
no,
I'm a big data person. Like, let me look at the stats and then I'll tell you the truth.
yeah. I think the real world is, um, I know we're sort of like broadening the scope here of like
Yeah.
humans in general, but I think the real world is it's about the people you engage with moment to moment. Like
Yeah.
that's, our environment. And so we have, because of technology, which I'm grateful for technology and whatnot, we can really have kind of like a pretty broad worldview. And then that worldview is obviously filtered via systems that are not doesn't have our best interest. So it'll feed us things that, the worst of the worst because it catches your eyes and it's like startling. But by and large, I mean, these are the best of times. And despite this feeling like, oh, it's the worst, everybody's so stressed out, overwhelmed. And really, it's more like you have such a luxury to be stressed out about things that have kind of nothing to do with you in a sense. And
Yeah.
not that I mean, I'm very mindful of what's going on in the world and, I'm concerned about a lot of things. But at the same time, I have, people that are near me and things that I want to achieve. And this includes my career and the influence I want to have on people. And there's so much good things that we can do. And really what I do with my project Vestman is try to like filter out some of these things that are like not dramatic differences, but there are some things you can do to just feel better,
Hmm.
to thrive in vet med, to thrive in your life. And really my pivot from, being, I suppose, a generalist. I mean, I'm a science nerd by nature and a health nut and whatnot. Um, is I've been talking about this stuff since 1996. So that's
Yeah.
when I first started practicing. And the messaging hasn't changed. I mean, we're learning a little bit more about exercise, and I mean, this stuff kind of like evolves, gradually over time. And really, it's my focus specifically in the vet med space is because I married a veterinarian, and learned a lot about that over the past decade or so. And but the message is the same. We're all human beings, and we're all despite like the badge of honor of, you know, overworking and doing the tough things,
Yes.
which again to me is like not healthy, not a healthy way to make decisions. But I think that for as much resistance as there are in for some vet professionals, I feel like nobody would understand unless you're a veterinarian or a vet tech or you're in a vet hospital. You have no idea how hard this work is,
Right.
and I acknowledge like I've never done that before. But if you happen to be a human being, I do understand how your body works, you
Yes.
know. And so we're all bound by physiology. We're all stuck with it. We love it. You hate it. It is what it is. And there are things that we can do that the whole purpose of, when I talk to individuals and, you've probably seen some of my stuff on LinkedIn, like these things the messages I'm trying to get across is you have the power to make your life better. You can feel happier, you can sleep better, you can be more energetic, you can be more present to the people that you love and care about. You can be a better provider for your patients, you can be a better communicator with your clients and your family and friends through making small changes. And it's not something to be overwhelmed at or overwhelmed about. It's just being maybe humble enough to realize that, if you're at point A and you want to get to point B, it just may take a little time, but these micro little habits you can change when done well. And this is where I come in with my coaching is like, let me help guide you for success. It's nothing but better. It's better
Mhm.
and better and better and better and better. Where I feel like in vet med, so many people like I'm, falling off the cliff slowly at best. It's like, oh, let's tilt that the other
Let's
way.
tilt this. Yeah, tilt the
Yeah, you have
system.
the power to do that. That's my drive.
Yes. Well, I love it and I agree with it. And I feel like, you know, eh, one of the other things that I think did really kind of tip this scale to the wrong side is isolation that happened in a lot of places. And I think that probably has made our clients more difficult. And I do
Mm,
think, having done this over 40 years, I do think that clients have gotten much more difficult. But I think that that's a lot of that has to do with um, constantly bombarded with overstimulation about everything from conspiracy theories to, you know, the sky is falling. We're very much stay in chicken little mode all the time.
mhm.
And being able to turn that off, I think, is incredibly valuable. But having interactions with other human beings is incredibly important to our well-being.
100%.
And being socially isolated or not having good close friends, and those are also things that harm us. And so we also, and you mentioned something about doing outside activities in the gardens and stuff. So over the years and many talks I've given, I said, look, when you are off work and you want to go and volunteer, please do not volunteer in an animal
At a
shelter.
shelter.
Yeah, I said you need a mental break from this work. This work is mentally and physically challenging, and you need to go do something that teaches kids how to, draw or read books to people, tutor little kids in kindergarten. It's a hilarious thing to do. Or if you want to, go take your dog to kindergarten and listen to the children when you try to explain about vet med, tell you all about their animals because it goes off the rails really quickly. I've
Hmm.
done that a couple of times. It's a hoot. It's a hoot. But those are the fun things that we can do and just look for things outside of your normal life. I used to paint portraits. That was always fun for me. And of course,
Wow.
that takes some time and some space that I don't have at this point in the game, but I still have my paints. I still
There you
pull
go.
the brushes out every now and then to make sure they're okay because one of these days I'm going to start painting again.
Yeah.
But
And
we
it makes you
need,
interesting too, right? I think that when you talk to people, it adds color to your life. You're
yeah,
not just a vet tech. You're not just
yeah,
fill in the blank. This is my job description. It's like, and I know it's tough when the hypothetical you meet somebody. It's hard not to be like, oh, what do you do? Like that's, it's like, tell me the job you have. What's your name, rank, and serial number sort of
uh-huh,
approach to things, and it's oh, and not that that's totally bad, but I feel like if it ends right there, not super interesting. But if you talk to people who have lived an interesting life and they do this and that, and then oh, by the way, this is what I do to make a living.
right.
um it just, yeah, it just adds depth of this this fleeting moment that we're all here alive, spinning around on the planet. It's like, let's do something besides freak out all the time and let's
Yeah.
really embrace all these things. I mean, if you can find a hobby, gardening, great. Portrait, great. I
Yeah.
mean, for me, like I'm a cyclist, so I've been a
Uh-huh.
competitive cyclist for a long time. And while I worked full time and I race my bike full time and I do mountain bike, so it's like I have this whole other community
Right.
that means a lot to me. And it's not instead of what I do professionally, or it doesn't lessen anything I do
Mhm.
professionally. And if anything, it's like it
Yeah.
fortifies. It's like, oh, it's like I can, you meet the same people and same interests and stuff. But I think that it's, it goes back to you have to have that first little nudge if you're in that cycle, which people get to like, I work, I go home, sit on the couch, I'm stuck. A
Mhm.
lot of the clients that I end up coaching, the word stuck comes up quite a bit. Like it just feels like I know what I should do, or I want to be the person that does X, Y, Z, but I just like, oh, I just can't do it. And that's where like having a coach can kind of help
Uh-huh.
give you that little nudge. Um, but it's like night and day. Like once it starts and you realize, oh, you open up the door, there's a whole
Mhm.
lot of light that comes in. There's like all
Yeah.
these opportunities and all these other communities. It's like suddenly work isn't as stressful as it was,
Yeah.
because you're more diverse and it builds some resilience that's unique because there's more to it than just like struggling through and
Yeah. And
suffering.
you have something else to talk about.
Yeah, you,
Does
you
that feel
become an
right?
interesting person
Yeah.
for sure.
I have had a little bit of coaching. My friend Elaine Clemenson was getting her coaching license, and she said, "I can get some more hours. Can I coach you?" And I went, "Sure. I've never had coaching. We'll have some coaching." She said, "Kind of what do you want to accomplish?" And I said, "I need to move more. I'm sitting here at this desk creating content, and I got a standing desk that I rarely have stand." And she said, "What do you need to do?" And I said, "I just need to move more." She said, what do you think you could do? And I went, well, I get up every morning and I put on bedroom shoes and I don't take my bedroom shoes off sometimes all day long because I'm just toofing around the house. She said, why don't you put your tennis shoes on, your walking shoes? And I went, oh, I could do that. And so now, whenever the dog wants to go out, I have my walking shoes
Let's
on
go.
and off we do, and we go. And of course, there's nothing better for you than a dog that insists that he go out every 2 hours to walk around the block and see his fan club because that is my
Oh, sure.
neighbor is a fan of all are fans of my dog. So, in meeting, I've met every one of my neighbors. My husband will come in and go, "Who are you talking about?" And I said, "They live like four houses down to the left." He went, "How do you even know who these people are?" I went, "The dog.
The
The
dog, of
dog
course.
is
Yeah.
social, right? He has me meeting everybody, but I can't stress enough to the audience how important the things that we are talking about matter to living a good life.
Mhm.
And I've been doing this 42 years almost in vet med and worked in restaurants before that. So I've been around the block, let's put it that way, a while. And it is looking back on that, I think some of the best things that I have done is formed strong friendships, uh, do something that gets me outside of my profession at least
Mhm.
once a day and to do something differently and have a lot of diverse interest and I read a lot about a lot of different things and not just have tunnel vision and live in this space all the time. It can be purpose driven, it can be, important. And yes, taking care of animals, I think, is incredibly important, but it cannot be all you live for.
No.
You
So you get
need,
burned out.
yeah,
You get
you
burned
do.
out. I
Yeah.
think that we all need a little bit of diversity, and it's almost like, sleeping. Sleeping is like, oh, there's so much to do. Well, if you want to really achieve more, you have to recover.
Yeah.
If you want to achieve more professionally, and this is where like for me, cycling is the thing that I do a lot of, and I come up with the best ideas when I'm miles away from my computer,
Yes.
not talking to anybody, not reading the latest science research, not listening to the vet podcast, thing. It's just like I'm out in the middle of nowhere and it's like, oh, I got a clear head. I'm not trying to think about anything, but it's like, oh, I guess like the perspective of everything changes just because it's a different environment. And I think that maybe, we get locked into the computer as we all do. It's, there's things we can learn, obviously, but it's a lot of doing, but it's not necessarily growing. And we need a little bit of space for that. And so that's
Mhm.
where hobbies and social networks and kind of getting outside of your habits gets you unstuck. And then it's like, wow, there's a whole world. The best thing I can do
Mhm.
for work sometimes is almost I need to go do something else.
Yeah, go play.
Yeah,
It's a great value in play
oh,
and
for
being
sure.
bored. This is the other thing too. We must accept boredom. We should
Yes.
not sit and scroll on our phone.
No,
Sometimes just doing nothing
just
and
be.
letting our mind wander and, sitting and staring at clouds go by. And then those ideas, like you said, the ideas, the problems are solved because your mind becomes uncluttered and
Yeah.
it allows your imagination to take over when you are not constantly feeding it a lot of bright lights and whistles and things that
Yeah.
are happening and clickbait and all those kind of things. So we have our best ideas quietly.
Yeah. And I think it really helps us get perspective as well. And so I
Hmm.
think that, I've gone on, again, for me, it's my riding my bike, like, I can be, stressed out and kind of, preoccupied about, a project or, client or coaching or whatever I'm doing. And it can kind of like, almost like it builds and builds and builds. Like I'm on a hamster wheel, like, oh, I got all this stuff. It's like, okay, I got to like step away for a little bit. And then I can come back. The same things are still there, but it's like, oh, it's not a big deal. I'm just going to do X, Y, Z, or I can put that off. It's not a big deal. It's like, wait a minute, like nothing has changed. My environment is literally the exact same. It's in, between
Yeah,
my ears where like everything
all in
out with,
there.
a little bit of cool breeze in my face is like, wait a minute, that flushed everything out. Like this,
Uh-huh.
there's nothing like what's the big deal? Like chill out.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't get that if I lived right here, like
Hmm.
right on a computer
Right
screen.
on, right on the screen. Yeah,
So I think the same can be said for, you know, that front desk person who's been taking a hit from the agitated clients that come in or the, stressed clients that come in. It's easy to kind of get stuck in feeling like you're getting pummeled all the time,
hmm
but you can be, a little more resilient to that, or at least give a little bit more grace, perhaps, if you take care of yourself
hmm
and doing all the things that we talked about. And oftentimes, for as simple as it sounds, like going for that 5 minute walk, it can be night and day, and
absolutely.
give you a fresh start. And I
Yeah.
think that if you there isn't this is where I kind of get a little bit of pushback when I say no matter what clinic you're in, you can get outside for 5 minutes. I was like, oh no, I can't. No, absolutely can't. It's like unless you are in like a war zone and there's like, bloodied bodies that you're putting pressure on to stop the bleeding, like you have 5 minutes somewhere within the day. And I think that the risk I think too for vet med, this is tough for practice owners to maybe bring on board a coach or a consultant to kind of like brainstorm some stuff because you know what, it costs a little bit of money,
It does.
but the research is clear too. There's the name of the paper escapes me right now, but there was a study on like the cost of burnout in vet med or something like that was whatever the title was. Um, like losing and trying to replace one veterinary technician, estimated cost is around $59,000.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so I can't afford to, invest $20 into some healthy food in the break room. Can't do that. I can't afford, a little session on body mechanics training. We just can't afford that. And then the vet tech walks out the door. That's
Yeah.
real.
Yeah.
And not to mention like the morale of the whole place. It's
Hmm.
like, there's such a massive impact when something like that happens. And yet there's still like this kind of, I don't really know, maybe next year, this is a tough year. It's like, well, it's going to be tougher if you have people that are like broken, walking out the door, leaving the careers. It's just not a humane thing to be doing
Right.
anyhow. But
Right.
like, man, there's a really relatively inexpensive way to do things, or you can wait until it gets really bad. And it's
Yeah.
like
And then you're
right
paying out
now,
the fires.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it's too, that's also human nature. That's not unique to vet med, but I
Yeah.
think sometimes we're all kind of inflicting our own wounds
Sure.
sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's funny. I mean, I managed hospitals for 23 years, and I guess I had a good model from my parents because I grew up in business, and looking after your people was one of the pillars of my parents' philosophy. And
Hmm.
so when I brought it into vet med, because it's the only thing I knew, right? People would look at me and go, well, how did you run a labor cost that's that low? And it's because nobody ever quits. And they all know their job. And I don't spend any time training people because people are already trained and they read each other's mind. And they're incredibly effective and efficient. Plus, the clients have had years of experience with the same people. And there's a huge trust factor that they just go, whatever you say, go do that.
Hmm.
And you don't deal with constantly upset clients all the time. I was kind of shocked when I started consulting because I assumed that most people ran their practices kind of like I was running my practice, because that's how business is done. And medicine was probably different out there. But when I got out into the world and saw the train wrecks of the way people were running their hospitals and treating their people, I was stunned,
Yeah,
absolutely stunned, and figured out I had a lot of work to do. And we all do. All of us who are advisors to the profession have a lot of work to do. Somebody asked me one day, they said, and like if you go to the human side in dentistry, the consultants don't like each other. They're very competitive with each other, and they're certainly not going to collaborate. But that's completely different in vet med. And you all get along and you refer to each other if it's not in your strong suit. I said, yeah. I said, that's because we have so much work to do that until the day
it's
we
enough to
die,
go around. Yeah,
there is plenty of work for us all to do
yeah,
because veterinarians are notoriously ineffective business owners for the most part. And
100%.
but that's what, they're smart so they can learn. They
Yeah,
just need to be taught, and that's the goal, is just to teach them.
and be
Well,
open
Erin, yeah,
and be open to that.
yes, absolutely. This has been a great conversation, and I certainly hope people listen to it and take advantage of your work and improving the lives of their teams. They're, physically and mentally, we can do so much better for our staff, and it in the long run, it just doesn't cost that much. So we have to look at this. This is a long game. Business is a long game. Taking care of your people is a long game, and
It's an
we should
investment.
look to have sustainability and durability. I love the word durability that you brought up too, because I think that probably hits the nail on the head for what we need. We need a durable profession.
Yeah, it's a tough person. It's a tough profession, and I think that when I sometimes say this to groups, it's maybe hits hard sometimes because I want to say it's not going to get easier.
Yeah,
If you think that there's going to be less demands on you in this industry, that if you think that your patients are going to start weighing less or something, or you're going to be kneeling on and off the floor less often, like no, none of that is the case. It at best, this is as good as it's going to get. And so the best thing you can do to make it easier is to do some of the changes that we talked about today.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everyone for listening to today's episode of The Bend. And we'll put Aaron's contact information in the show notes so that you can reach out to him if you would like some appropriate training for your staff to make them physically capable of doing the work for a long period of time. And as always, if you enjoy this, please share it with a friend, tag us, leave us a review. I'd love to hear how you are bending the profession in your own way. If you'd like to be a guest, please contact me at debbieboonconsulting.com. Thanks again, Aaron, and thank you again for joining us on this episode of The Bend.